pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Review of job descriptions and personnel policy manual. Mr. Secretary.
Sir, if you look in your packet, the first item in there is this document, which is basically the position classifications and descriptions. This reflects all the positions in our government, and you'll see next to certain ones that there's a position added or a job change, and many of them now are just name changes. The predominant thing I'd like to present with this is that we had a classification called project supervisor that was kind of a catch-all for some of the senior people, and all of that's been changed. Now everyone has a defined job, and the second part of your packet is these job descriptions that are now defined, everybody's job, and who they report to, and the skill and the pay rates that they're in. We think that this is the first step towards a good evaluation program, a good program to help manage our workforce and our employees. I've gone over with each one of you individually how this reflects the pay plan that we're talking about as an adjustment in the budget. But we're here to answer any questions you have about any of the particular job descriptions that we've now come up with. As I said, all of these project supervisors that we had, and now the jobs have been defined. A number of them have been changed. There was like a GIS coordinator, we had a GIS manager, that kind of thing. But if there's any particular issues that you might have, I'd be happy to answer any questions related to it.
Any questions for Mr. Secretary?
I'd like to commend the administration, human resource, Mr. Secretary, for having the initiative to do this. It's something that's been needed, and I think you guys did a good job. I looked at most of this, and being in the chemical industry where we've gotten paid well, and labor's had always on the sharp, and I just thank you guys for bringing them up and giving them the opportunity to make a decent living to take care of their families.
Thank you.
I'd also like to echo that, as well as we've discussed this in the past, giving clear, forthright objectives for progression through this. It's not just something of coming in and being stagnant in one position. There's a clear path forward for those folks who want to progress through the system, as well as monetarily, as well as through responsibility and promotion. So that's something that I think has come out of this. It's going to be a real asset for the parish as well.
But just one final comment. I will tell you, we just finished last week our first line supervisor training for everyone that has direct supervision over line folks. And we went over these job descriptions. We went over the personnel manual. We brought everybody to the same point now in relation to their ability to manage and evaluate their employees. The training, I thought, was very well received. I got some very favorable comments from the lowest workers to the highest workers in relation to now being on the same page. Now they know what the expectations from the parish are. The next step for us after this will be in December. We will now do an evaluation on every employee in December for the beginning of a January to December evaluation cycle. They're going to all be on the same cycle, all be on the same plan, all be on the same strategy. And I think you will see an increase in productivity in the workforce as a result of those actions. So I really appreciate your help in getting us to this point.
We need to entertain a motion to
Offer that motion
to adopt this to the council. Motion by Councilman Thompson, second by Councilman Cullen. Any discussion? Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Okay, we'll move forward to the number 4 compensation plan.
Okay, but let me go back a second. The personnel policy manual.
Sure.
Okay. This, according to the charter, requires your adoption. Okay. The changes that we're going to propose in the personnel policy manual. They're pretty voluminous, but I think that we can sum them up in fairly short order in relation to the kinds of major changes that we're discussing here. And I've got Ms. Kitchen here to kind of walk you fairly quickly through the proposed changes that we have.
Sure. Ms. Kim?
If you have any questions, most of the changes are in red. And sometimes it was just a question of changing a word. We defined at will on page 8 so that there's no question about what at will means. And if you flip through, under temporary appointments, we tried to make some things that were ambiguous a little bit clearer to the employees. Some things came down through administration on page 13 where it talks about the payroll authorization form. From here on out, before an employee starts working for Ascension Parish, the payroll authorization form must be signed and completed and returned to Human Resources before that employee is actually able to start working.
Ms. Finch,
Sir?
page 11, you had to change, go back to 90 days. Page 11.
Yes, and we did change the 30 to 90 where we wrote. I apologize for that typo.
That's okay.
Then if you flip through, on page 20 where it talks about duplication of records, it just goes through and again clarifies all personnel are entitled to copies of their personnel file, but they must give us 3 days in order to process those copies. Again, page 22 just has some verbiage that was changed, 90 days, exceeds at the bottom. On page 23, we put D there, supervisor's comments will be required if an employee scores a needs improvement or unsatisfactory on any part of the appraisal. And as Mr. Grant just told you, during the training, we passed out job descriptions and then talked about performance appraisals and how those two documents are tied together, that your job description is how you will be appraised. That should be an ongoing process throughout the year for supervisors and their employees. But if there is a needs improvement, there must be some narrative there. The performance appraisal is basically a tool for the employee in order to get better at what they do. So that was a real important part of our training. At the bottom of page 23, we just basically put in the Fair Labor Standards Act with regard to exempt employees. There's been some question and confusion in the past with regard to exempt employees and what's required of them. So we basically put that in there. Does anybody have any questions about what that is with exempt? Under Fair Labor Standards, if you've accrued vacation or sick leave, you can't be required to use those if you miss as an exempt employee. Under the classification plan on page 26, we basically talked about the Ascension salary scales, which defines the minimum and maximum pay. We added that to the paragraph. Page 28, again, just clarifies for the employee. We put in an example so that the parish employees could understand how to calculate their time. And we also put in the overtime pay for public works and drainage supervisors, what a call-out is and how you pay for that. There was some confusion in the past. And again, this is the document that all employees are given when they come on. Page 29, we added will, again, to make it a little clearer. Page 30, again, tells how disaster pay for exempt employees. There was a great deal of that during Hurricane Gustav. An exempt employee must work their 40 hours of regular time, and we must have a disaster declared by parish president and president in order for us to receive that time and a half.
Excuse me one second.
Sir?
So employees have to complete their 40 hours before they can receive their time and a half?
An exempt employee.
An exempt.
An exempt employee, yes, sir.
Okay. How is it with the regular employee? They get time and a half after 8 hours?
No, they have to work their 40
They
hours
have
as
to
well.
work 40 hours as
Right.
well.
Mhm. And there hasn't really been any confusion with the hourly workers. It was basically the exempt employees who needed to have it clarified. If you flip to page 32, basically now all new employees are required to enroll in direct deposit unless there's a special circumstance. Page 33, we clarified there, upon separation of employment, employees are paid their final wages on or before the next regular payday, but not later than 15 days following the date of discharge, whichever occurs first. That needed to be clarified. Page 34, employees who are absent from work on workers' comp are required to turn in their uniforms. That wasn't in the document before. Once the employee returns to work, we will order new uniforms for them. We pay for the upkeep of their uniforms. Page 36, we had a couple of employees who were not in the parochial retirement, so we had to add that in there to cover them, but you are required to enroll in the parochial system. Page 38, we basically just took the 80 hours, 120, 160, and 200 hours and put that in weeks so that the employees wouldn't have to calculate their vacation. Page 40, additional request for extended leave is addressed on a case-by-case basis. And if you haven't accrued enough time with the parish to do the Family Medical Leave Act, you're required to use leave without pay.
But
No.
we have to give them. We have to give it to them by law, right?
Time off.
Give them time
FMLA.
off.
Right, but they have to take leave without pay. Funeral leave must be noted on the time cards, and there's a spot on our timesheets for the notation about the relationship. If that is not done, the employee will be docked for the time taken off. And it's in our policy manual about how much time you can take off and how much time you get for the relationship. That's in the paragraph above. We didn't change anything there. Again, just tried to clarify what some of our policies are because some people thought they were ambiguous. Page 44 talks about an employee who is on leave of absence without pay for more than 30 days is responsible for 100% of the cost of his or her portion of employee benefits, which is due no later than the 5th day of each month. If the payment is not made on time, the benefits will be canceled. Page 45, you can see we added Veterans Day. Thank you for that.
Which day, the floating holiday, which one we removed? Oh, we didn't remove any.
We haven't removed any, as to my
Just
knowledge.
add Veterans Day.
We added Veterans Day. Part-time employees are eligible for holiday pay if the holiday falls on a regularly scheduled workday for that employee. The part-time employee will be paid holiday pay for that day that they've worked on that scheduled day. On page 50, unless on an approved break or lunch period, Ascension Parish employees will not be allowed to use personal cell phones. Exceptions may be made for emergency situations. Personal cell phones should be kept on silent or vibrate while employees on duty. This is another area that we talked a great deal about in the supervisor's training. You can see what we deleted is in blue. Things that we thought we really didn't need under the dress code. We added under will not be allowed loose or baggy clothing, and that was a safety issue. Page 56, where it talks about uniforms. Uniform shirts should be buttoned at all times, and they should fit properly. Loose or baggy uniforms will not be allowed. Again, that was a safety issue, and people that are in uniforms are basically out for the public to see, so they're kind of our first line image that the public sees.
So they can't wear their shirt out their pants.
They can wear out their payments, but it has to be buttoned, and if they're so baggy, but the safety manager would like to have that addressed. On page 58, at the request of the administration, parish vehicles may not be transferred from one department to the other without approval from the administration. On page 63, we took out felony indictment or charge and just tightened that up a little bit and left out the verbiage that wasn't really needed. If you have any questions about that. On page 69, we changed our discipline policy. We felt like it was a little bit too long, so we changed it now to, as you can see there, a verbal warning, a written warning, suspension without pay, and termination of employment. We talked a lot about this in supervisors training, that documentation is really important with regard to discipline. Human resources really can't do a great deal unless we have the documentation in the folder. So now, even a verbal warning has to be documented to HR so that we can't put it in a personnel folder. And then it basically tells you what each step entails. Do you have any questions about those?
How long this stays in your file, the verbal warning?
We don't take it out unless there's a reason to.
So after 3 years, it doesn't come out?
No, sir.
It says on the bottom here that it remains for 24 months.
No, well,
The
Written, that's a written warning.
That's written as a
Remain in
verbal.
effect for a minimum of 24 months.
well, then I would think if your written comes out, the verbal would come out as well.
It's got a 12 months. It says a verbal reminder will be documented on a form placed in employee's personnel folder, and human resource will remain on for 12 months.
It says for a minimum, so
Minimum.
12 months.
minimum, that means we can keep it longer.
Exactly.
And I will tell you that I really think that needs to stay because it's helped us discipline people that have needed to be disciplined. And without that documentation in their file, it would make it more difficult. On page 74, it talks about hearings. All employees are given due process. They have the right to ask for a hearing before the Human Resources Review Board. We included in there that when you appeal a decision, that your entire personnel folder can be submitted. Page 76 talks about the levels of grievance. We shortened that somewhat. Level 2, you can see there that shall file an employee grievance form with the HR department. Any employee who wishes to file an employee grievance form should contact the Human Resources Department for information on how to do so. They generally have 15 days. And I think the last part talks about our substance abuse on page 83. Samples shall be collected and tested initially with the use of an iScreen one-step drug screen test card for immediate results. Should an employee test positive for an illegal substance using the iScreen test card, they will be immediately sent home with pay until the results can be received from the lab. The lab will either confirm or deny a positive screen. And that is to ensure that the way that it stands now, we have to wait 3 to 4 days for the results. And should an employee be on an illegal substance and using our vehicles, then we're still at great risk. So we just felt like the iScreen is the best way to go to protect the parish. The sanctions on page 85. Any employee who violates the substance abuse policy will be subject to disciplinary action up to and including termination of employment. Those situations will be as follows. If you refuse to cooperate or participate in our testing program when requested to do so, pursuant to our policy, will result in automatic termination of employment. Substituting or tampering with the urine or blood sample will result in automatic termination of employment. Number 3 is the first offense of testing and confirming positive will result in a 30-day suspension without pay, and the employee will be required to cooperate in a rehabilitation program. Second offense of testing and confirming positive will result in automatic termination of employment.
Who pays for the rehabilitation program?
Pardon?
Who pays for
We
the-
do. And there was some discussion about that, so
It may be pretty costly,
no, I don't think that it's costly. We already have a, contract with EAP, which is a counseling service, and
That's good.
Any part of the insurance covers that? Their personal insurance?
I don't believe.
I wouldn't think so.
What part do we have as far as coverage if an employee comes to us ahead of time and says, I have a substance abuse problem and wants to go into counseling?
We help them get that counseling, which is one of the things we talked about in the training as well. If an employee acknowledges or realizes and acknowledges that they have a substance abuse problem, we want to help an employee overcome that problem and get them back to work as quickly as possible. But the day that you test positive is not the day to tell us that you have a problem. We already know that then. So our goal is to help those people and keep them employed with the parish. And we have counseling set up, we have EAP, but if they acknowledge that, and they can come to HR on a confidential basis and let us know that, and we'll help them get that help that they need. But once they confirm positive, well, we know you have a problem then, it's too late then, you're going to be subject to the sanctions that we have.
And what puts someone in the pool for drug testing? Is it a random pool? Is everybody in it? Or?
It's a random. Basically, we get to work in the morning, and one employee in Human Resources receives Social Security numbers, and we put the names corresponding to that, and we go out with the testing trailer, and we call the employees in, and they are tested. If you test positive, you'll be on every random for the next year. And if we suspect that an employee is under the influence of an illegal substance, then we can require that you test any time during the year, any day, any time.
So everybody's in the pool.
Everybody's in the pool.
Well, if you get tested 4 times in 1 year, that don't seem to be random.
It truly is random. I'm in that boat.
It's a small work, the probabilities against.
But it truly is random, and I will tell you that even the Human Resources Department, there is one employee there who knows the morning when they get to work that we are having a random. And that person contacts everybody else.
That's right. Question?
Anything else, Michelle?
No, I think that's it, unless you have some questions or comments or things that you would
Legal
like.
review this? Have legal?
Yes. Legal, finance, administration, human resources, all the departments. Any
Good
questions?
job.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You need a motion on that?
Yes, sir, as I said,
I'll go ahead and make that motion.
A motion to adopt changes to the policy manual, second by Mr. Lambert, second by Mr. Thompson. Any further discussion? Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Moving on to item 4.
as we discussed at the last Personnel Committee meeting, I presented to you the proposed compensation plan that's a part of the 2009 budget. Basically, the way the plan was developed was to do a regional analysis of similar government to determine where we sat in the compensation schedule. A couple of goals. One is that I already felt that we probably were on the low end with our entry-level employees, and that we needed to do some leveling there. And to get, quite honestly, 2 things done. One, I'm trying to see if we can retain folks a little bit better than we've been able to. In the last year, we saw 17% turnover, mostly at the low end of the scale. The second piece of that was that we have been very heavily dependent on temporary workers, primarily through contract service, to the tune of about 1.6 million in 08. We've expended on temporary workers. So I asked that we set this new minimum, and if you indeed had a full-time employee, they met the minimum, but if they also were a temporary employee, we hired them as a parish employee and not as a contractor, and they would be in that minimum, and that saves money as well. Then the rest of the plan basically proceeded to do a $2.10 leveling of the scale at the low end, and was it $3.40 at the upper end of the scale to create some mobility for people to grow with it. The second piece of that was to create these classes and scales, Secretary 1, Secretary 2, 3, so you know how to progress through the system. And you could set your, if you wanted to be a 4 in 5 years, you knew what you had to do. You knew what skill set you had to meet and the like. So all of that together then ends up costing, and is estimated to be a budget impact of about $700,000 for the leveling, the adjustments, and it includes a 4% across the board increase for 09.
I offer a motion that we accept the increase and the changes in the salary.
Motion by Councilman Thompson. Second. Second by Councilman Cullen. Any discussion? Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Moving on to item 5, discussion of 24 new positions.
Well, I want to go over these basically because they came up in some of the discussions that we've had in the budget. What we're putting in the budget in the upcoming year is really kind of a minimum of new positions, and it addresses the issue that I talked about earlier. One being that Public Works has got about 9 of them, which used to be temporary contract employees that are now going to be drivers and operators and that kind of thing. But I want to run down the list pretty quickly for you to let you know that what kind of positions I'm talking about here. In our administrative office, we're going to put a secretary scanner. We're going to try and put all of our documents on microfiche or within an electronic system. The building department is going to do the same thing. So there's a scanning clerk there. And which is interesting about that is that scanning clerk was a contract employee that we're not going to hire. So it's not that it's a new position, but it's a new full-time position with the same person now coming to work for the parish. The planning department is going to bring on a planner primarily to oversee the master plan that we're going to be undertaking in the coming year. We're going to hire a grants coordinator and try and step back from some of the people that we contracted grants out to and see if we can recover some of that administrative cost that we usually pay on grants, which is about 4% per grant, and basically fund that position that way and do it in-house. In drainage, we're going to hire a customer service project manager, basically to give them somebody that can go out and begin to interact with the public a bit better than some of the folks that there have done. In animal shelter, we're going to bring a person from part-time to full-time. Same thing as a part-time person at mental health. Formalize the recreation director position and park rec technician. There will be registered nurse now at the jail. Fire District 3 is bringing on 3 firefighters, and we're going to formalize one of the sewer operators for our 4 sewer plants. So it's basic position, it's real work, it's things that we've been doing and need to do. There's very few that are basically any augmentation of service. It's just basically baseline service in position. Any questions?
Are we still going to have a CEO kid from the school, student? That has been part-time, or we still going to have those kids from the school?
Yeah, but that we got, hardly any money. I mean, and it's a good program and a good opportunity for kids to get exposed to go.
Thank you.
Yeah, I sat in with Mr. Cedric on this, and just to let the public know that it's not 24 new positions like he's stating. It is positions that's there already with just a new title, basically, is what's taking place. So, when you hear 24 new positions, it kind of get some people in.
Exactly. So I want to make sure we clarify that.
Glad to
And
make sure.
clarify we're going to as well, is that it's basically within the new pay rate. You're clarifying what positions of which we already had them. It's just giving them a definite title, so it's not the new position. So.
Anything else?
Need a motion on this?
Yes.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Councilman Thompson to approve this, second by Councilman Lambert. Any further discussion?
Again, I appreciate y'all job. Y'all did a good job, and I'm sure the employees will appreciate y'all. Thanks again.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Got a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion. Meeting adjourned.